In part 2 of this story, as Princess Fatima grappled with the return of her old affliction and the dissonance of her newfound status, the grand facade she had constructed began to crumble. Buba's presence ignited a tumultuous clash between the past and the present, forcing Fatima to confront the profound consequences of her choices. As secrets unravel and tensions escalate, the fate of the kingdom and her own hangs precariously in balance. Will she find redemption amidst the wreckage of her ambitions, or will the shadows of her past eclipse her chance at true happiness? Discover what happens next as the drama unfolds, and stay tuned for the gripping continuation of Fatima's journey. The palace, once a cavern of despair, now hummed with a renewed vitality. Princess Fatima, still weak but alive, moved through her chambers with cautious steps. The fever had ebbed, replaced by an unsettling calm. Her once scorched skin, marked by the plague's ravages, now glowed with an almost unnerving freshness. Every movement she made was met with a startling lack of the pervasive odor that had plagued her for years. The air around her was clear, her senses freed from the stifling stench. Standing before a full-length mirror, Fatima marveled at her reflection. The princess's once tarnished complexion now radiated a soft, ethereal glow. She tentatively lifted her arm, inhaling deeply, and was met with an unexpected sweetness. Her long-suffered stench was gone, replaced by a fragrant aroma she couldn't quite place. The change was so profound that it felt almost unreal, like an illusion crafted by her fevered dreams. Yet, joy quickly gave way to confusion. Fatima's mind churned with questions. Was this change truly a blessing, or was it a cruel trick of fate? The very plague that nearly took her life had, in its destructive wake, granted her what she had longed for, a fresh, untainted existence. But the nature of this miracle left her uneasy. Was it a sign of divine favor or a harbinger of something darker? Her elation was tempered by an underlying dread. She wondered if the plague had altered more than just her appearance. Had it changed her essence? As the mirror's reflection mocked her with its perfection, Fatima's once clear path to self-discovery became obscured by a fog of existential doubt. The very thing that should have been her salvation now loomed as a potential trap, shrouded in the sinister uncertainty of what lay beneath. The day of Fatima's return to society dawned with an air of celebration. The gates of the palace, once a barrier to the outside world, swung open with an almost ceremonial grandeur. As she stepped onto the cobblestone streets, Fatima was met with an outpouring of admiration that felt both exhilarating and disorienting. The villagers, who had once shunned her, now greeted her with cheers, their faces lit with awe and reverence. The very essence of their praise felt like a paradox. It was as if she had been reborn into a life of public adulation. The sensory overload was intense, vivid colors of festival decorations, the intoxicating scents of food and flowers, and the cacophony of joyous voices. Yet, despite the external celebration, Fatima felt an internal discord. The praise and affection she received were a stark contrast to her previous isolation, and the discrepancy gnawed at her sense of self. The princess had been defined by her isolation, and now, in this new role, she felt as if she were donning a mask that did not quite fit. As she walked through the throng, she noticed subtle glances and whispers. Her new aura, though fresh and fragrant, seemed to carry an undercurrent of suspicion. Some villagers, while respectful, eyed her with a wariness that hinted at an underlying tension. This duality of public adoration and private skepticism began to weigh heavily on her. The deeper Fatima delved into her reintegrated life, the more she sensed that her newfound acceptance was tinged with expectations she did not fully understand. The transition from outcast to celebrated princess seemed too seamless, as if she were being tested by forces beyond her control. The joy of her acceptance was clouded by a creeping anxiety, making her wonder if she was merely a pawn in a larger, more enigmatic scheme. The village buzzed with anticipation as word spread that Buba was back. The air was thick with curiosity and excitement, but for Fatima, it was suffused with apprehension. She stood by the palace window, watching as Buba's figure emerged from the crowd. His return was a beacon of hope in her tangled world, yet it also cast a shadow over her newfound status. When their eyes met, the connection was instantaneous, but Fatima's heart pounded with an unfamiliar trepidation. Buba approached with a mixture of relief and warmth, his presence a stark reminder of the simplicity and purity of their past connection. Yet, as they embraced, Fatima felt a pang of dissonance. Her recent experiences had changed her, and the once comforting familiarity of Buba's presence now seemed like a relic of an uncertain past. Buba's smile faltered as he noticed Fatima's hesitation. The transformation of the princess into a celebrated figure had altered the dynamics between them. Her royal status had introduced a gap she was not sure how to bridge. Their love, once a sanctuary, now felt out of place in the grand tapestry of her new life. Fatima struggled with conflicting emotions. She was overwhelmed by her fear of public judgment and the pressure to maintain her new identity. As she contemplated the future, her insecurities began to bubble to the surface. What if her rekindled love with Buba jeopardized everything she had worked so hard to achieve? What if their love was now anachronistic in the realm of her new responsibilities? Their reunion was bittersweet, fraught with the tension between longing and duty. Fatima and Buba found themselves ensnared in a complex web of desire and obligation, unsure if their past love could harmonize with her current reality. The weight of their unspoken doubts loomed heavy, casting a veil of suspense over their future together. As Buba drew near, his face illuminated with the soft glow of the setting sun, Fatima felt an unexpected swell of fear and guilt. He reached out, his voice trembling with hopeful anticipation, but she recoiled, her heart heavy with her newfound responsibilities. I can't, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt foreign on her tongue, a painful contradiction to the emotions that once flowed freely between them. Buba's face fell, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. The vibrant energy he once had seemed to dim as he took a step back, a silent acknowledgement of the chasm that now lay between them. His heart was palpable, his shoulders slumped as he tried to make sense of Fatima's rejection. The sight of him, so deeply wounded, cut through Fatima like a knife. She saw the raw pain in his eyes and felt a churning turmoil within herself. Fatima retreated into the confines of her newly ornate palace, her heart aching as she watched Buba walk away. The walls of her new world, once a fortress of safety, now felt like a prison. She was tormented by the bitter irony of her situation. The very status she had longed for had become a barrier to the love she cherished. In the silence of her chamber, Fatima was haunted by memories of their shared laughter and tender moments. Her regret grew, a gnawing presence that refused to be ignored. She questioned if she had sacrificed the one true source of happiness for the illusion of societal acceptance. Her tears flowed freely, a desperate plea for clarity amid the suffocating pressure of her new identity. As the moonlight filtered through her window, casting long shadows across the room, Fatima grappled with the emotional fallout of her choice. She was caught in a relentless internal conflict, her desire for Buba and her fear of societal expectations. The distance she had imposed upon herself now felt insurmountable, and the painful reality of her decision set in. The grand hall of the palace was abuzz with anticipation as the wrestling tournament was set to begin. Banners of vibrant colors adorned the walls, and the air was thick with the scent of preparation. Princess Fatima, dressed in a regal gown but with an anxious edge in her eyes, observed the scene from her elevated seat. Driven by her father's insistence and the relentless pressure to prove her worth, she had orchestrated this spectacle to validate her new social standing and find a suitor who would reflect her elevated status. Yet, amidst the clamor of the tournament preparations, Fatima's obsession with outward appearances had led to a startling oversight. Her personal hygiene had once again slipped. The old, haunting odor began to resurface, subtly but unmistakably. The moment was a cruel twist of fate. Fatima's fears had come full circle, and she was unwittingly back in the position she had fought so hard to escape. As the first competitors took the stage, Fatima's unease grew. Her confidence, once so steadfast, wavered. Whispers began to circulate among the spectators, with some murmuring about the princess's offensive body odor. Her attempts to ignore the rising discomfort were in vain, as her keen sense of smell betrayed her once again. The tournament proceeded with fervor, but Fatima's heart was no longer in it. She was torn between her desire to maintain her facade and her gnawing self-doubt. As the day wore on, the spectacle became a farce of grandeur masking the internal chaos that plagued her. The wrestling matches, instead of being a triumph, became a backdrop to her escalating anxiety. When the final competitor was declared the winner, Fatima's internal struggle reached a crescendo. The crowd's adulation felt hollow, a stark contrast to the disarray within her. Her new suitor, a well-regarded but superficial figure, seemed oblivious to her turmoil. Yet, Fatima knew that behind the veneer of success, her old struggles were resurfacing, unresolved and menacing. As the tournament concluded, Fatima was left alone in her chamber, the echoes of the day's events reverberating in her mind. The glittering facade of her newfound status felt fragile, and the unresolved tension of her past cast a long shadow over her future. Her initial euphoria was overshadowed by the haunting realization that despite her outward success, she remained trapped in a cycle of her own making. As the sun reached its zenith, casting its golden rays over the grand arena, the tournament began with great fanfare. Fatima, poised in her regal attire, attempted to maintain her composure amidst the hustle and bustle. However, her anxiety about the day's proceedings only intensified her distressing condition. Unbeknownst to the audience, the old, unmistakable odor had returned with a vengeance, the result of a lapse in her personal care in the wake of her social ascent. The first sign of trouble came with the whispers, a subtle but insidious murmur that spread through the crowd. Fatima's heart raced as the murmur grew louder, turning into an unmistakable wave of revulsion. Spectators began to shift uncomfortably, their expressions twisting into grimaces of distaste. The arena, once filled with excitement and anticipation, now became a stage of unease and growing discomfort. The wrestlers, initially eager to compete, faltered as the odor wafted through the air. Their performance was affected, their movements hesitant and awkward. The crowd's disapproval was palpable, their faces etched with disgust. Fatima watched in horror as her grand event deteriorated into chaos. The lavish spectacle she had orchestrated to bolster her new status now became a display of her most dreaded fear, the return of the odor that had once isolated her. In a dramatic twist, the tournament organizers, desperate to salvage the situation, attempted to cover the scent with fragrant herbs and spices, but their efforts were in vain. The pungent odor persisted, a cruel reminder of Fatima's unfulfilled quest for no mercy. As the day progressed, her humiliation deepened, the grandeur of her new life seemed to crumble before her eyes. The final match was a mere formality, a token gesture in a day overshadowed by failure. The triumphant suitor, while acclaimed, was indifferent to the real struggle behind Fatima's facade. She was left to confront the bitter truth: her old problem, which she had hoped was vanquished, was still a formidable foe. Alone in her chamber that evening, the weight of the day's events pressed heavily upon her. Her reflection in the mirror revealed not just the physical toll but the deep emotional scars. The once promising tournament had become a nightmare, unraveling her newfound identity and leaving her to face the haunting reality that she was, once again, trapped in the cycle of her past. The arena, now dim and quiet after the disastrous tournament, was a stark contrast to the previous day's vibrancy. Fatima, disheveled and defeated, sought solace in the solitude of a secluded garden. The delicate scent of night-blooming flowers was a cruel irony against the lingering trace of her old affliction. As she sat on a stone bench, her head in her hands, the world seemed to blur into a haze of regret and despair. From a distance, Buba watched her with a heavy heart. His own wounds from her rejection were still raw, but the sight of Fatima in such distress cut deeper than any personal grievance. Ignoring the throbbing ache of his own heart, he approached her with a determined step, each stride echoing with unspoken compassion. "Princess Fatima," he called softly, his voice trembling with genuine concern. The title felt foreign and distant, overshadowed by the intimacy of their past. Fatima looked up, her eyes red and swollen, struggling to mask her anguish. For a moment, there was an awkward silence, charged with the weight of their shared history. "I'm sorry," Buba said, his voice breaking. "I shouldn't have left you like that. I saw what happened and," he paused, swallowing hard. "I'm here now. To help. To be with you." Fatima's heart clenched. The sincerity in Buba's eyes shattered her defenses. "Why? After everything I've done?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "even when it hurts, I can't turn my back on someone who's suffering." "Not you." Their conversation was a fragile dance of raw emotion. Buba's words, though filled with forgiveness, were laced with a bittersweet acknowledgement of their fractured past. The truth of their unspoken pain emerged, mingling with the tangible grief of the present. "I've been so lost," Fatima admitted, tears mingling with her confession. "I thought I could leave it all behind with this new life, but I see now it's not that simple." Buba's gaze softened. "You don't have to face this alone. The world can be harsh, but if there's any part of me left that can help, I want to offer it." The night air seemed to hold its breath as their conversation deepened, bridging the gap between their hearts. In that moment of shared vulnerability, both Fatima and Buba faced the raw truth of their feelings and the weight of their choices. As the moonlight bathed them in its gentle glow, the pain of the past intertwined with a fragile hope for healing. In the solitude of her ornate chamber, Princess Fatima faced the mirror, her reflection fractured by the candlelight. The opulence around her felt increasingly hollow. As she stared at her image, her once celebrated beauty seemed tainted by the scars of vanity and regret. Her recent public humiliation, punctuated by the return of her old affliction, had ignited a searing self-awareness. The night before, Buba's compassion had pierced through her pretenses, unraveling the tightly wound threads of her self-delusion. She now recognized her vanity for what it was, a gilded cage that had blinded her to the deeper values of empathy and true connection. Each time she thought of Buba's wounded eyes and the betrayal she had inflicted, her heart tightened with remorse. Driven by the echoes of her internal struggle, Fatima resolved to confront her inner demons. She sought solace in the old library, where dusty tomes whispered forgotten wisdom. Immersed in ancient texts, she discovered forgotten rites and philosophical insights that challenged her superficiality. The struggle became a journey into the depth of her subconscious, where she unearthed buried fears and insecurities. In a sudden moment of clarity, Fatima understood that redemption wasn't merely about repairing external wounds, but transforming her inner self. She began practicing the rituals of humility and compassion, her actions reflecting a newfound resolve to make amends. However, the path to redemption was fraught with challenges, as her every attempt to change was met with resistance from those still wounded by her past actions. As she worked to rebuild her integrity, the very society that had once exalted her now viewed her with suspicion. Her genuine efforts were overshadowed by lingering doubts and whispers of her previous deeds. The struggle for redemption was not just a battle for her soul but a test of her willpower against the shadows of her past. As Princess Fatima immersed herself in her quest for redemption, the shadows of political machinations began to gather around her. Unbeknownst to her, a clandestine faction within the kingdom, led by the ambitious Duke Ben, saw her turmoil as a golden opportunity. Ben, who harbored a deep-seated grudge against the royal family, aimed to exploit Fatima's vulnerability to undermine the throne and seize power for himself. The Duke orchestrated a series of covert meetings with disillusioned nobles and influential figures, weaving a web of deceit. They spread rumors about Fatima's health and her mysterious condition, fueling suspicions and dissent among the populace. This propaganda campaign, designed to destabilize the kingdom, intensified the pressure on Fatima and her family. One evening, as Fatima walked through ancient texts in the library, a discreet note slipped under the door. It warned of a plot against her and her father, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Torn between fear and disbelief, she sought counsel from her most trusted advisor, who confirmed that the note was indeed a genuine threat. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Fatima was thrust into a new battle, one against unseen enemies who were using her personal struggles as a political weapon. The kingdom's stability was now at risk, and she had to navigate this treacherous landscape carefully, all while grappling with her own quest for redemption. As the stakes grew higher, every decision she made became crucial, both for her survival and the future of the kingdom. In the dimly lit corridors of the palace, whispers of betrayal began to echo through the marble halls. Fatima, already burdened by the growing threats against her and her family, was jolted by a new revelation. A trusted advisor, Baron Femi, was orchestrating a dark conspiracy to topple the throne.